America, welcome into the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham, and it is great to be back with Dino and Rod Martin. The Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, online at freedomchamber.net. Thanks for tuning in. I've got a smorgasbord, a cornucopia, a plethora of topics that we're going to discuss, guys, and it's good to be back with you. So we're gonna talk about. Let's throw out the first topic: the SPLC and the corruption and the inner workings of that, and how all that got uncovered. Rod Martin, the floor is yours.
Well, there's really not a more corrupt organization in America than the SPLC, and the indictment shows why. This is an organization ostensibly exists for the purpose of stopping hate speech, stopping hate crimes. They were paying donor money to the Nazi Party. They were paying donor money to the Klan. They were paying millions of dollars out to organize things like the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. That's possibly the most well-known white supremacist event of the last decade. And you know why they did it? They did it to justify their existence. There simply isn't enough racism in this country coming from white people anymore to be able to stay afloat. They need to have some kind of horrible thing coming from our team to be able to justify their existence to their big corporate donors. And let's make no mistake, big corporate donors. The SPLC maintains a list of supposed hate groups. They include people like the Family Research Council. I mean, are you kidding me? You know, this is started by Dr. Dobson, run by Tony Perkins. This is not a hate group. They just believe the Bible. To the SPLC, the Bible is hate speech. And so they have this list of hate groups that includes just about every conservative group you can name. And they have talked countless American and even foreign corporations into adopting those lists as blacklists, groups they can't deal with, people they will not speak to, all this kind of thing. It is an enormous, enormous left-wing censorship operation. And it turns out it was corrupt as heck. And not only that, when the DOJ gets into some of their salaries and cushy deals with in-laws and all of that, there are people going to the pen.
Do you think? I mean, Rod, let's be honest. Do you think
Yes.
our Attorney General now is going to arrest people
I
and put
think
them on
Todd
trial?
Blanche very much wants to. And
I hope
honestly,
so.
you see that the day before, you've got the Act Blue scandal blowing up. I wrote a deep dive on the Act Blue scandal that went out first thing this morning. Act Blue is a campaign finance juggernaut. It is the shadow bank of the left in this country. $16 billion raised for Democrat candidates and causes. And it turns out it's all a scam too. They were using straw donors, for instance, people who have absolutely no idea that they have donated to Act Blue. In some cases, these straw donors had supposedly given to Act Blue hundreds of separate contributions in the span of like a couple days. I mean, who does that? That isn't real. And it's all of this foreign money. That's what the indictment says, or not the indictment in this case. SPLC got indicted. Act Blue will get indicted, but this is from the preliminary House investigative report. They were taking huge amounts of foreign money, laundering it through their system, deliberately removing any safeguards that could have allowed them to comply with federal law, and using that to finance Democrat campaigns. It is utterly corrupt. And the more we get into the machinery of the Democratic Party and its supporters, the more corruption we find, whether we're talking about welfare fraud in Minnesota and California, or we're talking about their fundraising arm in Act Blue, or even the fake hate crime machine that is the SPLC.
And let's throw in BLM and let's throw in the state of Illinois. I think that's a pretty
Absolutely.
good pot to stir.
Yeah, and
Dean, your thoughts?
I know our listeners, all of us want prosecutions quickly. I get it. I understand that. I have the same feelings emotionally, but you also remember our emotions was where the devil plays. It takes a while to get an indictment. You think about the high profile murder cases. Charlie Kirk was shot a long time ago and that trial has not started yet. And it's because it takes a long time to get indictments on these folks. And then to build cases that are absolutely bulletproof. 18 months is about normal, and this president has not been in office 18 months. We haven't given them enough time. Pam Bondi set up and assembled a grand jury in the Southern District of Florida in January. They've been sitting, waiting to do their job. And that's Pam Bondi, she got fired for it. But that's going to come. So the mechanism's there. Kash Patel was out yesterday with some big announcements, and it's not, well, we think we're going to, it's we are going to. They are going down. And Brennan's probably going to be first big name, but there's going to be a long list of names. And from a strategical standpoint, when do you want those trials? When do you want those indictments? When do you want that big news to be made public? Right after the primaries. That's when it has the most impact, because then you can taint the ones that need to be tainted and with a really, really black mark, and start questioning their voters, because their voters will know what they're voting for. And that's a big turn on the midterms. And we all know everything's getting geared towards the midterms. Everything, our economy, the war in Iran, everything is pointed towards the midterms. It's all.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
Actually, let me jump in.
Let me ask you this real quick. Real quick. Let me ask you this question.
Chuck, and just say, when
Go
we
ahead.
talk about a long list of names, there are already 130 witnesses subpoenaed in that Southern District of Florida grand jury. 130. One of them is Jim Comey. I mean, they're serious. And on the Act Blue thing, it's not just another congressional hearing and a strongly worded letter. There's a DOJ investigation in progress. There are also 19 state attorneys general going after them. And Ken Paxton in Texas filed a huge civil suit against them yesterday. So no, things are gonna happen. We're gonna see arrests. It just takes a minute.
And the question I have to pose to both of you on all this is, how does all of that cut through the static and the clutter to make sure the American public is up to speed and up to date on exactly what's happening? Because right now it's about Iran, it's about the ceasefire, it's about gas prices, it's about inflation, it's about, all of this, but all of this stuff's happening in the background that has just got huge implications, where your tax dollars have been spent illegally funding things that are illegal, things that have been laundering. How does it get into the forefront of the American public's mind as we move into the midterms that, hey, you need to really think about who you're bringing into your offices that you want people to be publicly elected to? How do we do that, Rod? How do we cut through that clutter?
Well, I would encourage everybody to watch the Business Pulse. That would be a
Attaboy.
start. Also, you should come to
Check it.
rodmartin.org, where we do daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business Call is absolutely phenomenal. The fact is, people
I'll keep
only
teeing
have
them up for you, Rod. I'll keep teeing them up. You just knock them out of the park, bud.
There you go. Look, it's always going to be difficult to capture everybody's attention all at once. And when you have a war in progress, obviously that's going to dominate the news. The president understands that perfectly. We're going to wrap this thing up. That's what the blockade is really about. The blockade is preventing Iran from collecting something between $400 and $500 million a day, which represents not just oil exports from Iran. No, oil exports from Iran represent 80% of the Iranian government budget. They aren't able to pay those IRGC thugs they have to have in the streets. And they can't pay those Shia militias that they've imported from Iraq. So what you do is you get to a point where that system collapses. And so of course you'll extend the ceasefire. That's fine. Trump got 8 girls who were going to be executed off. That's fantastic. That's a start. But that's gonna capture people's attention. And these other things, I would just encourage people to have a little more faith in the president. The president delivers on his promises. We've seen it over and over. Maybe it doesn't happen in the first 10 minutes of the day, but it probably happens in the second 10 minutes. Nobody has ever gotten more done in the first year of a presidency than Donald Trump. There's no comparison. So be patient, trust the man. He's getting to these things. He's not stupid. He knows we need fair and free elections. He knows we need to get rid of the fraud. He knows how the Democrats cheat because they cheated him.
The
Well
other side
said.
of it is CNN and even MSN, I call it PMSNBC, but they will not be able to ignore Brennan, Clapper, Comey in an orange jumpsuit doing a perp walk. They will have to cover it. And I think you just got to let the process go long enough to get towards the end. Nobody likes to watch grass grow. Nobody does, or paint dry. And that's what it feels like we're doing right now. But big moves are being made. These things take a lot of time. You think about some of the just normal routine crimes in communities taking years to get to a trial. We're going to do it about as fast as it can be done, but as fast as it can be done is typically about 18 months. And again, that puts the timing right where we want it, right after the primaries. So there's a lot of strategy going on, and you don't want to use up all your ammo as the first 15 minutes of deer season.
Well, what'll be interesting, well said there, Dean. What'll be interesting to see is how much the mainstream media picks up on the 8 Iranian women that were on trial to be hung in the public square that President Trump saved their lives. Because all we hear about is Trump is a woman hater. Trump's a womanizer. Are the ones that are out there protesting what we're doing in Iran, are they going to say thank you? My guess is probably not. You won't see a lick of that on anywhere on mainstream. You won't see, any of the late night talk show nuts talking about it either, because it doesn't fit the narrative. But it's something that the American public needs to be aware of, that these beautiful women, these beautiful mothers, daughters, wives were ready to be hung because you know why? They stood up for freedom. And those people that have the mainstream media, they don't like that because it goes against the narrative. And I don't want to get on my soapbox, but it's stuff like that that just drives me absolutely crazy on what we're fighting here. We're fighting internally, but we're also fighting the external forces as well. But the internal stuff should be on the side of freedom, and they're not. And that's what just drives me up a wall. So I won't talk any more about that. We'll see how it plays out in the mainstream. We really
let me add one piece to it.
Go ahead.
I
Dean.
have to. This much I know. I can't say I know it because I've seen the evidence, because I know it because I know how our military works. Someone has told Pakistan to get a message to IRGC that if those girls get hurt, there's going to be at least 100 of them killed. And by the way, we have Ghost Murmur.
Yes.
We've got your heartbeat. All we got to do is send in a $1,500 drone, and if you go to another room, it just goes in a different window.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
and I'd put a number on it: 250 IRGC members for every one of those females. Every one of them.
You may be watching this going, how does all this tie into the business pulse? Because it's what moves the economy along. I mean, what's going on in Iran is kind of move the economy in a different direction. What's happening now with SPLC, that's moving the economy in a direction. So all this ties together in what comes together as the economy with the inflation numbers coming out. And I want to kind of get on that because we're running up against a hard clock here. Dean, the inflation numbers came out. What do we know?
1.76 on true inflation today. Government's pointing 3.3. We all know it's politicized. And I'll said it 100 times. I'll say it again. They need to take the L out of BLS and just move on. That is a far, far better metric. They're measuring, I think, like 18,000 items in real time, and they're not having to do substitutes, and they're looking at Zillow rents instead of calling homeowners and say, what do you think you'd collect your house for? BLS is just, they're stuck in the dark ages. They're probably still running DOS on their computers. And then here we are counting on them to give us hard economic numbers. So yes, we're going through a little bit of pain right now. I acknowledge it. But what happens when this thing in Iran is over and that 1% additional inflation because of oil comes off? And then we're going to see, even the Fed, they're still probably going to report 2.2, 2.3 and scream, oh my God, it's above the 2% limit. But it's going to get really hard to keep interest rates where they are. And again, what is that target? The midterms. Because now you've seen inflation come up, but now it comes down, and here's the midterms. Once we're coming off a really good run of deflation. That's got to be, the timing on it's too perfect to be accidental. that's planned.
Absolutely. Rod, your
We
thoughts?
actually have real deflation in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma. I saw it this morning on Fox Business. It's extraordinary. And so we have to keep these things in perspective. The Wall Street Journal had a great story this morning about how radically less Americans are paying for gasoline than the whole rest of the world. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about the Philippines or Germany, all around the world, they're paying many times what we are. In Germany, it's over $8.50 a gallon works out to, and we're not seeing anything like that. And this is a big piece. We've talked about this in prior weeks, but we can't say this enough. The media is constantly saying, "Oh, Trump hasn't opened the strait." Why would Trump open the strait? That makes no sense. They are assuming that this is all about the way we calculated the world in the 1970s when we were dependent on Persian Gulf oil. Every day that the strait is closed is another day that the whole world has to buy oil and gas from the United States. Full stop. That is the deal. And what that does is that increases the available investment for new refineries, new pipelines, and new production. And you just watch. We'll be up 5 million barrels a day in production over the next 10 years. We'll dramatically expand refining capacity. Gasoline prices in America are going to go through the floor. Natural gas prices are probably going to be really steadily way underneath the rest of the world because not going to drop, but they're probably going to stay steady because we're going to expand production, but we're also going to expand exports. And all of that money is coming into the U.S. economy, to U.S. workers and the U.S. Treasury. So it's just a completely different world. Trump is all over this, and the Iran war is not some random adventure. We are taking out the source of all of the armed conflicts in the Middle East, allowing us to move forces out of the region, focus on containing China, and shift oil and gas purchases to the United States. This is all America first.
I've always said the international snakehead is Iran and the local snakehead is Chicago here in the United States. So
Yes.
if we could move our efforts after Iran back to Illinois and Chicago, we might be in a better state here where I live, and you wouldn't see the exodus that you're seeing down to where you live.
And
to both of
and
you.
you hear this garbage about Trump shut down the straits, and he has for Iran only. But what did Iran just do? They just shot up 3 ships and probably took some hostages. So just exactly who's keeping that strait shut? This is very mutual. The only thing is they went first and then Trump matched them. So that's reality. And it was shut down before Trump said, that's fine. We're going to shut it down for you. And how does that work? And realistically, everybody screams, you don't want boots on the ground. You don't want boots on the ground. You don't want boots on the ground. And I don't either. Most of my brothers, I care deeply, but I've been there. But the best way to keep boots off the ground is keep that strait closed, because that's probably doing as much damage to the country as far as forcing it to tear the leadership to tear itself apart as our bombs did. And it's a whole lot cheaper than those Tomahawk missiles we're firing. So, this is not it is an economic weapon, but economic weapons are weapons of war. And it's brilliant. It's genius. It doesn't put our soldiers' lives at risk. You've seen how few we've lost, and we cry for the 13 that we have lost, but we were losing 13 an hour in Iraq and Afghanistan. So we've done well. This is not the war it was 20 years or 35 years ago when I was running in and out of the Gulf. We have weapons and everything else that the need to put boots on the ground is nowhere near what it was 20 years ago because the weapons we have developed. You understand that when we left Afghanistan, AI was not even a thing yet. So our military and our industrial complex have had, 5 years to put all that together, high speed, low drag, and they're doing it. And so lessons from past wars are not applicable to lessons of today. Just like when we were in the Gulf, first Gulf War, the lessons of Vietnam really, there were some lessons from Vietnam you could learn and apply, but there was a lot you couldn't, and it was different. So wars are different, and we have technology that is just absolutely remarkable. I'm convinced 100% the reason President allowed the CIA to put out that information on the Ghost Murmur was because the IRGC leadership now knows we've got your heartbeat. We can find you from anywhere. $1,500 drone, you're gone.
Very much so. Hey, guys, we're running up against a hard break here, and I want to talk real quick. And I think it's incredibly important because I want to snip out this part of the Business Pulse and talk about taxes right now, Dean. You've got some stuff you wanted to share with us, and we want to make sure we get it out to our listeners. And then we'll recap and give Rod his final thought before we close the show.
Yeah, one of the things that I do not see business owners using that they should be is the Augusta rule. This is really, really simple. What is the fair market rent of your house? Take half a month of that and write a check out of your corporate, your LLC account, whatever you got. Sole proprietors this doesn't work for. But if you've got a corporate entity, meaning an S Corp, C Corp, LLC, then you can rent your home to your business for 14 days. And why does this apply? Because here in Paducah, just like at the Masters, we have a quilt show going on. And we have people from all over the world coming around, driving blue hairs, driving the wrong way down Broadway. But people are renting out homes and their bedrooms for the week. Somewhere along the way, the government said, the IRS said 14 days or less is de minimis. It doesn't apply. So apply that rule to your business, rent your home to your business 14 days, do make it a bona fide event, have a office parties there, do something there that you can justify it. Don't cheat, but use the rules as you can. Not take the typical thing to look at. If you were going to rent your home or a home, and I've got rental properties, I want a 12% return. So there's 12 months in you. So take 1/2 of 1% of your home's value, and that'll make up a pretty good justifiable number to the IRS. It won't save you thousands and thousands of dollars, but it'll save you more than a few hundred, and it takes 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Easiest tax deduction you're ever going to get if you've got a incorporated entity. So make sure you're getting that. Go do that this week. Get the money transferred and just write it off and know you got that done.
And Dean, where can people connect with you to talk about that or other subjects on the matter of taxes?
Yeah, just jump on our website, owencpa.com. That's OWENCPA.com. Super easy to connect with my team. We'll set up a Zoom call. The conversation and friendship are always free. And let's see what we can do to help you disinherit the government and not your kids.
Amen. Rod Martin, you're going to get the closing thoughts here on the Business Pulse. Fire away.
Well, just one last thought on Iran. The media just will not tell the truth about any of this, partly because they're so deranged with TDS that they can't imagine anything could be going well if Donald Trump touches it, which is usually the exact opposite of true. So what happens when the Iranians fire on these cargo ships? Well, okay, 2 of those cargo ships were sailing from the UAE. One was sailing from Saudi Arabia. What the Iranians just did is they hardened the resistance in the Gulf Arab states against them. They're already telling Trump, look, if you're going to make peace, but what we really want is this regime gone. Okay, well, this didn't help. The second thing is they're playing a very different game than Trump is. Trump is actually trying to bankrupt them and force them to surrender, versus what the Iranians just did, which wasn't aimed at keeping the strait closed per se, or aimed at Trump. It's aimed at getting our allies to pressure Trump to back off. He isn't going to do that. They don't understand who they're dealing with, so they're going to lose. And if you want to know why in depth, come to rodmartin.org. That's rodmartin.org. Daily geopolitical analysis. Fox Business calls absolutely phenomenal. Tens of thousands of subscribers for our daily long form analysis. Hundreds of thousands on social media. There's a reason. So come to rodmartin.org.
Love it. Thank you both very much. This has been the Business Pulse. And if you ever want to get in touch with me, I'm going to throw out my email, guys. I normally don't do this, but Chuck@freedomsquare.com. Chuck@freedomsquare.com. We'd love your feedback on what you've seen today, what topics you'd like us to discuss, or anything else. Chuck@freedomsquare.com. Rod Martin, Dean Owen, it is always a pleasure. Your batting average is Hall of Fame worthy, and I appreciate you both very much. This has been the Business Pulse. Healthcare costs are crushing America's small businesses. Premiums have risen over 240% in the last decade, forcing companies to choose between growth and healthcare coverage. The Freedom Chamber, found online at freedomchamber.net, has a better solution: the Guardianship Healthcare Plan. Designed by a doctor who understands that strong care starts with a strong doctor-patient relationship. This plan puts people first while protecting your bottom line. With up to 45% annual premium savings, the Guardianship Plan delivers real care, real savings, and real freedom. Your business, your employees, your health plan needs the Guardianship. The Freedom Chamber Guardianship Plan. Get your quote today. Learn how your business can take control of healthcare. Visit freedomchamber.net. The Pro-American Business Network.